I'm joined by INSEAD Professor Erin Meyer, recently published author in the Harvard Business Review 10 Must-Reads on Managing Across Cultures. Thank you for joining me, Erin.
It's a pleasure, Klaus.
So in the article, you're talking about the cultural map as a tool for global leaders to navigate the international waters of cross-cultural management. So can you elaborate? What is the cultural map?
Yes, well, I have a system that breaks cultural differences down to 8 behavioral scales. So it looks at things like how we make decisions differently in different countries, or how we build trust differently in different parts of the world. And then through a lot of research we've been conducting at INSEAD, we have about 55 countries that are positioned up and down these scales. So you can then map countries up next to one another, and you can see that when you're working with one country, you might need to adapt your style of giving negative feedback in one direction to be more direct, or you might find that when you make a decision you need to be more consensual when working with another country. So the map provides you a system so that you can decode your own cultural differences in comparison to the country or countries that you're working with.
And so how do leadership styles differ across cultures?
Well, leadership is really interesting because we kind of think of like there's one thing that means good leadership around the world, but that's something that is very culturally specific. So we learn as children and later when we enter the workforce in some cultures that we really need to show a good deal of respect and deference to the authority figure or the person in charge. And in other cultures we learn that the authority figure is really just like a facilitator among equals. I had a situation a while ago where I was working with a Dutch company. The Netherlands is one of the most egalitarian countries in the world, and in the Netherlands the Dutch really learn, the boss is just a facilitator among equals. And I had these Mexicans who had joined this company who were managing Dutch people, and in Mexico, Mexicans learn to show a lot more respect to the boss. So I had one of these Mexicans who said, managing Dutch people is absolutely incredible because I'm trying to roll out my strategy, get everybody on the same page, and my Dutch employees, they are challenging me, they're contradicting me, they're taking my ideas off in other directions. He said, sometimes I just want to get down on my knees and plead with them. Please don't forget that I'm the boss. So I believe this is really challenging because in today's global world, it's no longer enough to know how to lead the Dutch way or the Mexican way or the American way or the Chinese way. We have to be flexible enough to adapt our leadership style to the population that we're working with in order to get the results that we need.
So that is how it affects leaders. What about if you're a part of a global cross-cultural team? How does those thoughts apply?
Well, teamwork is, of course, very subtle. Like we're often working at a distance. We might not be able to see people's reactions. And then just simple things in the way we operate may create impressions that we had not intended. So, for example, in my own culture, the American culture, it's very common at the end of a telephone call that we would get off of the phone and we would put into writing what we've decided, and we would send that written recap off to the person that we've worked with. But one of my Indonesian clients said to me, Erin, in Indonesia, if we have a discussion on the telephone and we make some decisions verbally, that would really be enough for me. And then if you get off of the phone and you put into writing everything that you've just decided and you send that to me, that would be a clear signal to me that you don't trust me. So when we're working on global teams, we need to understand how our actions create perceptions in different parts of the world so that we can adapt our style and increase our effectiveness. And that's what I try to do with the culture map.
So what would be your general advice when working across cultures? Would it be to practice more explicit over-communication, or?
Well, my number one piece of advice is to learn about the difference between your culture and the culture that you're working with. And I try to provide a lot of tools both in my book and on my website so that you can actually map out the cultures and see the similarities and the differences. And then once you're aware of it, I think we should talk a lot more about these things. Using humble words to describe your own culture and curiosity to talk about the other culture. But I encourage everyone to learn and discuss so that we can make these things less dangerous for our effectiveness.
And how do you make sure that you sort of stay true to your authentic self. Everybody's talking about authentic leadership while still adapting to the local culture.
Yeah, well, that's a very popular question these days because, of course, authenticity is all over the leadership news. And, I preach a flexibility. So I believe that global leaders are people who have a strong sense, good global leaders are people who have a strong sense of what I call authentic flexibility. And if you think about it, like you have two legs, right? Your left leg and your right leg. And your left leg, that's like your authentic leg. That's your leg that's the most natural, the most comfortable. And of course, every effective leader has to have an authentic style. But that doesn't mean that with your other leg that you can't be working on learning techniques to adapt your style to the population that you're working with. The most effective leaders have worked so much on learning these techniques that they have a choice. When I'm in Sweden next week, I'm going to do it their way. I think I'm going to have better results. The next week when I'm in Thailand, maybe I'll do it my way. I think I'll have better results. To be a global leader is to know the difference between your own culture and your authentic style and how to get results in the other culture so that you can choose to maximize your effectiveness.
Okay, thank you. That's great advice. Trying to keep both feet on the ground. To learn more, read Erin Meyer's article in the HBR 10 Most Reads on managing across cultures and visit erinmeyer.com. Thank you.
Thank you.